Hi, my name is Leah, host of Take a Space podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Right before we get into the show, I would love to share with you one of the podcasts that I've been listening to recently.
Hi, I'm Kim.
And I'm Jennifer.
We're the hosts of the podcast Inebriated Input.
Every other week, we get drunk and answer your questions.
Whether it's how to handle a breakup, or your latest roommate drama, or just what you should buy if you're getting a cat, we're here for you.
While drinking. A lot.
And being generally charming and funny.
Inebriated Input is available on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple Podcast, or basically anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
And you can find more info at inebriatedinput.com. Cheers!
Please be sure to go check out Inebriated Input podcast. This week, I'm actually joined by Desmond Price of Independent Thought Podcast. Let's get into it. If you could be anybody for a day, who would you be?
Oh, like alive or no longer living?
I'll let you decide.
Oh, if I could be anybody for a day, who would I be? Well, I mean, right now I'd be Elon Musk, and I would jump into his body and prevent him from doing all the crazy stuff he's trying to do with Neuralink. Because I just did an episode on Neuralink and all the things that that's going to do. Because half of his project is, I think, going to be revolutionary for the world, and the second half of his project, I think, is going to destroy the world. So it's kind of a catch-22, because on one hand, I want him to do the project, because have you heard about Neuralink?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
I heard most of your episode. Yeah,
I don't need to explain to you what it is, but yeah, the fact that they're trying to cure like traumatic brain and spinal injuries, that's a big deal for a lot of people. You're talking about getting rid of Alzheimer's, getting rid of epilepsy, getting rid of maybe paralysis, blindness, like that is massive. But the jacking your brain to the internet part, like that, no. I need to get in Elon Musk's head right now and stop him before he becomes like the dude who basically like uploaded Skynet to the world, like Terminator stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like he's putting us on a dangerous path. Like, can't he just stick to making electric cars, sending rockets into space? Like, I don't even understand how he has that much time. Like, how can you be the head of 3 different massive companies at the same time? It's like one company wasn't good enough. I mean, can't you just be the head of Tesla? Did you know that Tesla is about to become like the biggest, like one, maybe like as big of a company in this country as Apple is? Because
I thought they were trending to be bigger than Amazon.
So yeah, basically that's what I'm trying to say. Like, they're trending to be like one of, if not the biggest company in the country, because of the fact that, actually, large and due part to Biden, because Biden is pushing through these tax credits for electric vehicles, not only for consumers but for manufacturers as well. And as of right now, Tesla has 82% of the market for electric vehicles in the U.S. And so as Biden's trying to get the whole country to transition to electric cars, well, if you're the company that owns 80% of them,
I mean, yeah.
So Elon Musk, and while I'm there for that 24 hours, I'll make sure that I deposit some money back into my account so I can get back into my body.
I just want to send you a little favor. Yeah, it's okay. He won't miss any of this money. Yeah.
He'll gain it back by the time he even like realizes it's gone. It'll be all right.
That's true.
Yeah,
that
it'll be fine.
It reminds me, Neuralink actually reminds me of the movie that I can't think of the guy's name. Whatever the guy's name who did Mad Max or Venom. I think that's the same guy.
Tom Hardy.
Tom Hardy. Was he the one who did Upgrade?
Oh, I haven't seen Upgrade.
So essentially, it's like the same thing. They inject, or so pretty much what happened was they got into a car accident. His spine was damaged, and they did experimental treatment on him where they injected a chip in him, and the chip makes him be able to walk and be able to do so because his spine injury was so bad that he was paralyzed from the neck down.
Right.
And so they injected a chip in him, and the chip essentially was able to help him have access to his body. But the chip also was AI, like Alexa, like, hey, can you, like, Alexa, like, make my legs walk or whatever. And so it's like one of those things. So if you haven't seen Upgrade, I would suggest that, because that's where we're trending with Elon Musk.
Yeah, it's definitely looking that way. I think the scarier thing was that after I put that episode out, I, like, did the thing that I normally do where I was like, I asked people on the episode to, send me a comment, like send me a DM, tell me what you think of Neuralink, so on and so forth. And I had so many people hop on in there and be like, I don't know why you think this is a bad thing. I can't wait to be a human cyborg. And I was like, who are these people?
Wait a minute. They know that it's not them actually control. Like, other people have access to your body. That's the part that's. Why would you want other people to have access to your body?
Listen, I'm at a loss for words because I'm actually at a loss for words. I was floored because it's okay when you have one person say, because we all know people who who have those opinions. They're just out there. They're a little weird. Those people exist. You just got to accept that. But
True.
when it was multiple people who came to me, then I became worried. I was like, you do realize this is not a good thing, right? Like, you do realize that, and which, honestly, here's the thing. What has scared me the most is that we've become so conditioned by companies and the government knowing every detail about our lives, because they do through our cell phones and through mass surveillance programs, that we are already conditioned to being okay with the fact of giving them all access. So, like, they already know so much about you, so what's the final step? Like, oh,
Right.
you want to be inside my brain? Sure. I mean, you already mostly know everything about me. What's the difference between that and actually being in my brain? I will lose my mind trying to wrap my head around how someone can think that way. But the fact that people are thinking that way frightens me, because I'm just like, don't you care that people would have access to your mind,
Exactly.
to your thoughts? Like, really? Like, you want people to have access to your thoughts?
That conditioning to how we get here without being critical of the steps that we took to get to this point, like, that is what trips me out each and every time. Like, the people who, like, when I talk to people and I say, when I'm thinking about something and I've never searched for it before, but because I'm thinking about maybe doing this thing, and I go on social media and then I see an ad for it, and I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like, and some people are like, well, you should see that this is an easy thing. You were obviously looking for it. The algorithm knew. So I was like, but why did the algorithm know? There's too many questions here. Why are you okay with this?
Yeah, it really is a great question. And some people are like, oh, I have nothing to hide. And I'm just like, listen, we're currently living in a time where cancel culture is becoming a really big thing, right? Like, people have to be careful about what they say, or else they can lose their job, they can lose their status in life, so on and so forth. Now, a lot of people have adapted really well by just, like, realizing that you just can't say certain things anymore, whether they just learn to censor themselves or they actually have changed their way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But what if someone didn't have to wait for you to speak anymore? What if they could just read your thoughts?
Exactly.
It's just like, and now it's like, it doesn't matter if you didn't say it or not. You were thinking it. I know that you were thinking it.
I mean, that's where we get a bunch of these sci-fi movies, like the precog one, Minority Report, with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Or we get these, or it's like, oh, because you were thinking of committing this murder, we're going to preemptively arrest you.
Right. I thought about punching people in the face all the time. I didn't do it.
Right. like, just because I was like, yeah, this would be a good idea if I can just teach this person a lesson. But I didn't go through with it. I didn't hit this person with my car. I didn't do anything. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
But it's just like, I just feel nervous about how so many people are just so willing to accept, like, oh, yes, they can have access to my everything because my phone already knows everything there is to know about me. And I'm just like, okay, guys, but do you think that's the best idea?
It blows my mind. It's crazy how much the culture has changed, because when you talk to somebody who's just like, 15, 20 years older than us, the idea of the government having so much access to your information was unheard of just back in the 90s.
Right.
But we desensitized ourselves to it over the guise of convenience, because cell phones have become so convenient, because they do so many things in our lives. We just got over the fact that others in our country were using them to spy on us.
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
and what's crazy about it is you would think the government would lie about that stuff, but now they're in the open about it. They're like, yeah, we spy on you.
Yeah, we'll use their information.
Yeah.
Like it's crazy when you think about, okay, so we have one of the things that I keep up with because I'm in finance is the Patriot Act and the Bank Secrecy Act and the rules of the Fed that keep changing. The Fed meaning the Federal Reserve. So we have these rules and regulations, and when we do, because I work in fraud and anti-money laundering, people are blown away when we're just like, we have to track cash and where it's coming from, where it's going, and the economic purpose of moving money around. And people are just the only time where they're not as forthcoming is when I talk to the older generation, the people who are maybe 10 to 15 years older than where we are. But the younger people are just like, no, I use this money for this, or I do this, da, da, da. The older generation, well, why do you want to know? Where do you want to know? And I'm like, listen, the Patriot Act has been extended. Like the Bank Secrecy Act is still being enforced. But because of, and I tell people, they ask these questions about why, when I opened this account 30 years ago, none of this information was relevant or none of it was necessary. And I'm like, yeah, but also, 9/11 happened 20 years ago. We have a lot of access to terrorist cells. There's a lot of cash being moved around. And if you have a bunch of rapidly moving funds going in and out of your account and it's not a part of your normal activity, we're going to ask you these questions. Well, I don't want to give up my information. Okay, well, and then the bank can choose not to have a relationship with that person. But all this information about what are you doing, where you're going, and all that stuff, like already the electronic funds are being tracked. The funds that are being sent via your debit card are being tracked. The fund, like all pretty much the stuff that you're doing, by and large, they know how many times you go to the grocery store. When are you going? When are you going to the movies, or whatever you're shopping on Amazon or whatever? Like they know all that stuff, and
Yeah.
It's just like it's weird that people are just like, oh yeah, this is the world now.
Yeah. No, it's amazing to me because I do not believe that the government needs that much information to track terrorism. I really don't. I don't think they need that much information. I mean, the thing that blows my mind, the question that doesn't really get asked enough, or that we don't really talk about enough, is how much money that the intelligence agencies actually get per year. We have such like the cloak of anonymity almost that's like over the Defense Department, where we just cut them a check for 55% of all tax revenue that goes to the Defense Department, and they never have to answer what they're doing with it. What we do know is that like the intelligence agencies like the CIA, the NSA, they get like 80 billion some dollars a year. And I'm like, on one hand, I'm like, listen, if y'all are keeping like things from going crazy, like I appreciate that. But let's just keep it real for a second. They apparently, with all the tools that they have at their disposal, they might be stopping terrorism over like outside of the country, but they don't seem too interested in stopping it inside the country, because we see, white supremacy happening all the time still. So it's like they have all the resources to track every single aspect of human life, and yet they're not doing it. So it's like, do they really need all that power? Because they're not even using it effectively.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. I think that we've gotten so used to allowing people access without holding them accountable for what they're supposed to do. Like, okay, so your job title says this, your functions include this. Are you yielding these results, or are you expecting us to just keep handing you our money? And it's just a weird thing that, and I'm hoping that we don't, as this next generation is coming up, we don't let up with getting them involved in government, because and we watched, and I think this is mostly coming from because I just watched Judas and the Black Messiah. That, first of all, Fred Hampton was a child. He was 21 years old. He was a young kid, but he was doing a lot in the community. And this only happened in the 60s. So that maybe there was a few changes that were made in government, but these people probably still hold power in office.
Oh yeah.
And those in what, maybe two and a half generations ago, it was more than likely these teachings that were taught from this generation to the next, and that is still ongoing in the thought patterns of what they do. We tell ourselves, oh, we do this thing because we want freedom, or we want security, but we don't want people to tell us what to do. We want to be protected, but we want to be able to have the freedom to move about how we want to move about. And in order to move about, the toll we pay is free access to us as people, to our bodies, to our minds, to our personalities, or whatever, for the purpose of making a sale, for the purpose of getting us ingrained into buying things, and to stay in consumerism. And with the government not changing as much from generation to generation, because we have like minimal term limits on politicians in office. Like, they can be career politicians, and that's all they do, and with each term be further and further removed from the rest of the country.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I mean, you're exactly right. And I definitely am worried about the fact that we have gotten so comfortable with giving up privacy for the sake of convenience, for the sake of safety. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, at the end of the day, like, when you tell a government agency, like, yeah, we need you to track a threat, like, of course you want them to track a threat, but at the same time, like, when you say, please track this threat, it shouldn't come at the cost of you giving away any basic right to privacy that you have. And it feels like so many people are so comfortable with the idea of, like, oh, well, they're trying to find terrorists, like, just let them have all the access they want to. It's like, no, they can find that stuff without having, like, unlimited access to everyone.
Right.
And I feel like we don't really have that conversation enough, because there's this huge stigma with critiquing anything that our Defense Department does, because if you critique any, like, portion that's affiliated with the military, then you're anti-military. If you critique anyone who is, doing these mass surveillance programs, then you somehow, that gets lumped into you hating the troops or something.
Yeah.
It's just such a stupid argument. It's just like, those people seem to be above, like, any form of accountability because they're involved with the military. And that's just not fair, because that basically allows anybody who is in there to do whatever they want without any repercussions whatsoever.
Right. And I think that what people need to understand, and what they miss, is that the very fact that a person is critiquing something, it means that, mostly, not all the time, sometimes critiques are just flippant statements that people say, but a legitimate critique about the ways an entity functions or something works is a person who actually wants it to be better.
Yeah.
We understand the necessity for it. We understand the necessity for the defense. We understand the necessity for government. However, by researching government, by looking at how it works and what fruits it yields, we're like, no, this could be better, or we need to change this, or we need to look at maybe doing this way. The very fact that it is being critiqued by people who are looking, even if it's not intricately looking at the inner workings of it, but understanding how it works and what results it's yielding, and wanting it to be better, means that you like it. you have to like it enough to want to pay attention. It's not like being a hater or just being somebody who can just walk by and say, well, this sucks, I don't like this. It's a critique is more specific than just saying that you don't like something.
Yeah.
It's looking at it, seeing okay, we want this to do X, but it's not doing X. So how can we fix this and work our way backwards? And so I don't like the idea that, well, if you critique a group or an entity or a thing, you are anti that thing. And it turns into you being a non-patriot or anti-American or whatever the case may be. And it's like, okay, I don't know where you're getting this from, but if that's what makes you feel better to call me these things, because I'm critiquing the very place that I live in. And we always hear, oh, we'll go back to your country. Well,
we're here.
I'm already like, my house is down the street. Is that where you want me to go?
Yeah.
This is where I am. This is my country. That's why I get to critique it.
Right. I don't think there's anything wrong with criticizing, the government. I recently, on my Instagram page, I asked a question about how is Biden doing so far? I said, like, is he doing good enough, or does he need to be doing more?
Yeah.
And because I know that most of my audience is left leaning, so I didn't really worry about whether or not they liked it at all. Because I had some people message me, and they were like, people like the few Republicans I have that followed me, they're like, I wish you would stop doing things altogether. And I was like, this question's not tailored for you. But anyway. So yeah, I had some people. It was actually, I'm not surprised, but the poll ended up being almost split. It was like 54-46. And there was quite a few people on the 46 camp, which was the doing good enough camp, who felt the need to message me afterwards. And they were like, I don't understand why so many people are critiquing Biden already. Like, what do they really expect from him? Like, what do they think that he's supposed to be able to control? What do you think he's supposed to be able to do? This, that, and the other. And it's basically just like these long paragraphs defending everything that Biden's done so far. And at the end of it was, how dare you attack him already? And I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, I'm just like, do you realize this is also the reason why, like, just like this mentality is the reason why Trump has such a stranglehold on the Republican Party? Is because you just flip this ideology onto the right, where so many people on the right never criticize their leader, which is why he was able to run buck wild. Because every single time that, and this didn't happen too often while he was president, but the couple times where he did actually piss off Republicans, he backed down. Because like any politician, all they care about staying in office. So if he realizes that he doesn't have the support of his own voter base, like, he changed his tunes. But on the right, you never really had that, because it was just like, we have to support Trump no matter what he does because he's always right. I don't ever want to live in that world, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm always going to be open to criticizing someone I voted for. When it comes to Biden, my personal opinion is, I know I voted for you, but if you're doing things I don't like, I'm going to critique you. Like, I'm going to critique you. I'm going to criticize you. I'm going to call you out. Like, that's the way it should be, in my opinion. Like, no one should be above criticism. Like, at the end of the day, we all have to realize that you work for me.
Yes, exactly.
You work for me. Like,
exactly.
Like, how do you get paid? I'm sorry, is it tax dollars? Okay, you work for me.
Right.
And
I think that's so true. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I think it's so true that people are so afraid to hold people accountable. Like, and it's not just in politics, right? I think that but especially shown, especially over these last, 4 or 5 years, that people are so afraid to just, well, this person said that they're going to do X and X hasn't been done. Well, let's just give them a couple weeks. We'll give them a couple months. We'll give them a couple years. And now it's the end of the term. What happened? When are we supposed to start holding them accountable? It's like, no, day one, you said XYZ. All right. So can we get a timeline of when that's going to happen? I'm willing to give grace. And when you put that poll out, I was kind of split, but I believe I was on the 54 side. I was I was kind of split on it just because I know that there's not really there's a lot he could do and it still wouldn't be enough. But I feel like he's essentially making steps. They're not really long strides, but he's actually taking steps. And but yeah, I would want him to do more. But I think that holding people accountable is not a new idea, but I feel like in the time that we're in, people are just willing to just let others ride. It's like I don't get it. And they take it as such an offense when you hold them accountable.
Exactly.
And it's okay, these are gonna get a little personal real quick. So I don't understand it when you have people, and because I was a mentor and even as a friend, like if you say that you're going to do something, and even with the other podcasters, shout out to Drake of Everything Culture, if he says he's going to do something, I'm like, did you write it down? Because if you didn't write it down, you're going to forget. If you're going to forget, it's not going to get done, and it's just going to be something that you kind of said that one time, but you're not really a man of sticking to your word. And since then, he'll like write stuff down and try to find a date of when it can get done. Same thing in my, like, when I mentor and when I help people, it's like, okay, I'm not going to hold you accountable to more than what you say that you're going to do. But then if I hold you accountable and say, hey, Desmond, you didn't do XYZ like you say you're going to do. You can't turn around and then get mad at me for holding you accountable for something you said you would do. But I have so many people who get so pissed when I say, hey, you didn't do XYZ, or hey, when are you going to get this done? Why are you criticizing? I was just working on, and I'm trying to do, and I'm like, I didn't ask you any of that. I don't care about any of that. This is what you said you would do. Like,
Yeah.
don't get mad at me. I don't understand that mentality, because I don't think we'll ever grow or get better. So they surround themselves with people who coddle them or enable them to just like say stuff but not have to stick with it.
Yeah, and you know, at the end of the day, I feel like that is what some people are just looking for. You know, I mean, I think that they're, depending on your personality type, you're either the kind of person who, either when you talk about something that's important to you, you either are the person who is just trying to vent,
Mm-hmm.
or you are trying to find constructive advice to use to move forward, you know?
Yeah.
So either you're looking to move forward, or you don't care about moving forward, but you want to complain about where you are. And sometimes you can be both. You know, sometimes you're just in it. Sometimes you're the person who wants to move forward, but on this day, you just want to complain. And that's
Yeah.
fine. You know, but some people never get to the point of moving forward. They just want every day to be the day they just complain. You know,
Yeah.
and you know what? I can give, you know, slack to those people. I have been that person, and sometimes it takes a couple years in your life of realizing that, you know, the plan in your mind didn't materialize. But do you have that moment where you switch and actually are real with yourself and tell yourself that what you're doing in life isn't good enough? You know, like
Mm.
your approach isn't good enough. Your hustle isn't good enough. Your effort isn't where it needs to be, you know, and then you have to make that decision about whether or not you're going to switch and give the energy necessary to be the person who actually just goes and does the things they said they're going to do, you
Yeah.
know. And kind of a little bit back onto the Biden thing really quick. You know, the when I asked that question, and I asked, like, you know, could he be doing more, it kind of dawned on me that maybe enough people don't realize what he all has authority to do,
Right.
and that might be the disconnect that some people are having. Kind of, for instance, I know, like right now, like the reason why I asked that question was because I don't think he's doing everything he could do, and it's not about, like, you know, snapping your fingers and being able to fix all the problems in the world. Like, we're not children. This ain't Disney. We know it's not like that. Okay.
Right. Right.
But it's about, what do you as president legitimately have power over, and are you using that power? And so, since Democrats have the White House and the Senate and the House right now, they have almost the ability to do anything that they want to do, almost. So in regards to the stimulus bill that they're trying to put together right now, they already have the total figure at 1.9 trillion. And they're going to put that bill onto the floor in the Senate to try to pass it through a special form called budget reconciliation. Now, since they're already going to do that, there was no reason to change anything in the bill. But Biden decided to try to change things in the bill, even though he didn't need to change anything in the bill. And the thing he was trying to change in the bill was not only taking the $2,000 checks and bring them down to $1,400. He was also trying to change the fact that originally it was supposed to go to anybody who made $75,000 or less, and bringing it down to anybody who made $50,000 or less, and then taking it from your 2020 wages. And instead of applying it to what happened in the pandemic last year, he wanted to apply it to what happened in 2019, pre-pandemic, so that would affect less and less people. And so that's where I wanted to bang my head through the wall, right? Because like, you have all the power in the world. You can't blame this on Mitch McConnell. You can't blame this on Trump. Like, you are making this decision for no good reason that anyone can imagine, and you don't have to do it.
Right.
So why are you doing it? Like, you just spent a whole year telling us about how much of a catastrophe we're living through right now, how we're in this economic plight because of COVID, because of the mismanagement of Trump handling COVID. And the first thing you do when you get into office is find a way to give less people money? Don't tell me he's doing enough.
Right.
Don't tell me he's doing enough. Like, you don't need to do that. Like, that's an active decision on your part to screw over people. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so I had to talk about it. And when I felt like people weren't hearing me, I had to say it again. And I'm going to say it again because people need to understand that, like, there's no one forcing him to do this. So he needs to answer for it.
Wow. I don't understand. And that's why I feel like that's why I'm hoping that we can get, younger people in there. They talk so bad about AOC and the younger people that are in Congress or in the Senate. And it's just like, okay, but in order for us to like change the tides, we have to have young people, but not just in federal government. We have to have them in local government as well, because that's where we're going to start effectively seeing change. So it's not even that, the person who's listening to this has to go into government, but actually being aware of what's going on in your local area is going to make a difference between whether or not you can effectively change something, or you may be able to write a letter or get your neighbors involved to getting something done. You know what I mean? And it's just starting off with that local mentality. It's wild that now that he's in power, or he's in office, say whatever. Now that he's holding the office of the presidency, and we have the Democrats, we have the Republicans. Like, how many executive orders has he done so far?
I lost count. It was quite a few on the first day.
I know he did like 12 or 13, and then 10 more, something like that.
I have not been keeping
the first and second day. I forgot, but he's like signing so many executive orders to essentially undo what Trump had done. And with so many executive orders, I was trying to understand, okay, so what is taking so long with the budget reconciliation part of it? And I did see your post. Oh my gosh, I was so done. Anybody who follows Dave Ramsey, I'm trying to understand why. When he posted that, if 1,400 or 600 is going to be the difference between keeping your lights on, you're already doing bad. And I'm like, yeah, what? How? Like, this is what happens when you have people who are essentially well off, who are so far removed from the reality that people who make under six figures essentially have to deal with. So it's just wild to me that making the statement that, if $1,200 or $1,400 is going to change your life. No, I just want to be able to afford groceries. Like I just want to be able to keep the lights on.
Right. And you know, you're hitting on something really serious here, which is David Ramsey, you know, that person on Fox who made that statement is not that much different than a lot of other people who come on to Fox. And I'm gonna be fair for a second, they're not a whole lot different from the people who come on MSNBC or CNN either. So you
Yeah.
have rich, upper class white people who have never experienced what it's like to, you know, like be in this sphere ever. And they've never left the liberal bubbles of Washington, D.C. or New York City. And they sit up in those communities, like looking down on the rest of us people, saying, like, why can't they just get their stuff together? Don't they realize that not everything in life is free? And it's just like, I'm sorry, how did you make your money? Like, I'm sorry, were you born, like David Ramsey in particular was born into wealth? He is the son of like really wealthy like real estate developers. He's never earned he's never like been middle class in his life. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like the audacity of these people to sit here and try to tell us, you know, like that if we, you know, like if $1,400 is a big deal, then something's going wrong with your life. Something's going wrong with a lot of people's lives. That's why we're in this moment where we're all complaining that we need things to be better because the system is messed up. When the system only works for 20% of the population, we need to ask ourselves, why do we have the system still in place the way it is? Like the system needs to be fixed. It's only working for a small number of people. And those small number of people keep getting on TV and trying to convince the other 80% that everything's going to be okay.
Right. And I don't understand that. I don't understand how we have people who are millionaires trying to talk for the people who only make maybe $1,200 a month. You can't speak for those people.
No.
If they're the ones who are, you know, whether or not they have children or other dependents, or even the ones who have to worry about, you know, moving back in with their parents or their parents moving back in with them. Like there's so many different things in life that people who are well off and, you know, not even in the top 1%, but at the millionaire status where they don't have to worry about, you know, if they can get groceries for the rest of the week. They don't have to worry about if they can extend their light bill payments or take care of medical bills or whatever. They don't have to worry about that. And when you don't have to worry about that, you can't talk to me about what I'm doing with my money.
Yeah.
You know, if you can write a $500,000 check and not even blink twice about it, you can't talk to me about my financial situation.
No, you know, it's irresponsible, but it also, I want to tell people that it's also on us to know to reject that, because I feel like so often, you know, we get caught up like just listening to quote unquote authority because it sounded like the right thing to say. So you have people on TV who are spouting out information out into the world, and you have millions of people who watch Fox, MSNBC, CNN all the time, and they just absorb everything that's being said by these people without really giving it a second of thought. You know, just assuming that person knows more than me about politics, therefore what they're saying must be true. No, I mean, you don't have to be a scholar or be involved in politics every single day to kind of smell when, you know, you're being fed some bullshit.
Right.
You know, like you know when someone's saying something that doesn't make sense. And so let's just be fair for a second. If someone tells you that, oh, well, if $1,400 is going to be a big deal for you, then obviously you're making some bad decisions with your life. We all know that we shouldn't listen to that person anymore. That person's credibility should mean jack after that. Because we all know that $1,400 is a big deal for a lot of people in this country. For a lot of people in this country. You know, no one has that extra money anymore. Not when wages are stagnating, when the housing crisis is like happening all over this country, where people's like rent is going up everywhere, when healthcare is getting more expensive, you know, when schooling is getting more expensive. I mean, like everything's getting more expensive, but wages are staying the same. So why wouldn't $1,400 be a big deal?
And you know what? Here's the thing that leads you down that dangerous path. So earlier we talked about, you know, you being in snow for like the first time of having to like drive in it, right?
Yeah.
And other people were talking about it like, oh, it's just what we do. And you yourself thought, well, I'll figure it out, right? So in that same vein, if we have these millionaires or these people who are so well off or whatever, they don't have to worry about everyday items, then when they say things like, well, $1,400 shouldn't make a difference, or you were already doing bad before this, so $1,400 isn't going to help, or $600 isn't going to do anything. When they say things like that, you have some people in the country who are like, I am making bad decisions. Oh, I am doing bad. Oh, things are not as bad as they seem. Or I really don't need that money. I just have to do better with what I have. And that style of thinking could be very dangerous, where we stop holding people in power accountable and we start looking at ourselves like, how can we fix this, when the very people in power are putting blocks in your way to be able to fix it, i.e., the wage stagnation. If we
Yes.
can have the minimum wage raised, then you won't have to worry about, okay, how can I make this work? Make it $6 to $7 an hour. Why am I making the same amount as somebody who graduated from high school? I don't know. How can I figure out what? Because when I graduated from high school, I was working at Champs and making $6.75 an hour.
Mm-hmm. There
are people who are still making that now, and that happened over a decade ago. So I couldn't imagine. That's why I'm like, yes, we need to raise minimum wage. Everything else has gone up. These companies, there's no way that Jeff Bezos, almost forgot his name. There's no way that he is like trillionaire status, right? But somehow his employees are making just above minimum wage.
Well, he probably tried a quick fact check on that one. His employees actually do make $15 an hour. But there's a different critique of him. The Amazon, while they do pay people $15 an hour, they have other barbaric ways of treating their employees.
Oh,
which
absolutely.
is, have you heard about how they track your steps at an Amazon warehouse? And if you're not stepping enough in a day, then they'll get you in trouble. You're only allowed to have like less than a 2-minute bathroom break, or else you can get written up. They apparently have Amazon scouts that follow people around these companies to make sure that no one's having any chatter about organizing into a union. And if they do, then they'll just lay off all the workers in those plants. It is wild what happens with Amazon. I'm sorry, we went down a different rabbit hole there, but
no, I know people who have worked there, and I'm just like, CrossFit people would not survive in those kind of conditions. like how are you trying to? And I was like, but what if you get hurt? Well, I don't have insurance, so
yeah.
I'm sorry. What? So if you get hurt, you're just hurt until you can get back to work? Well, no, I have to work hurt. There's absolutely no way. So I feel like if somebody's working at, and I think that was one of the other things, was that for what Amazon takes home, there's no reason why their workers should only be paid $15 an hour, as much work as they do.
I mean, at the very least, they could be given a lot better benefits. They could be allowed to go to the bathroom for 3 minutes. I mean,
listen, there's so many
endless.
There's so many things. But I feel like even if, people are, whether you're working at Burger King or working at the local grocery store, there's no, that those wages are just not livable.
No.
That's not a livable wage, especially when rent has gone up. I know in your area, you posted about it, how rent is just ridiculous. Housing prices are going up. Out here, they were typically, and I've lived in apartments, I've lived in houses, I know how it goes. You get the renewal notice, they say either we're staying the same or we're going up. And then sometimes they go up. It's like $20, $30, $130 they're going up this year. Who's paying that? Not me. I don't know who they're gonna get to come and pay this, but $130 a month is what you're going up. I didn't get a raise. Did somebody else get a raise that you know about? What are you talking about?
Yeah, the Zoom workers that are all leaving California got a raise.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I can't listen. being California born and raised and now moving about the country, I see the effects of what we do. And not just Californians, but like people like boomers who are retiring as well from like
Yeah.
the busy areas of like New York and the big cities and stuff like that, and going to these places like Alabama, like Montana, like Texas, like North Carolina, and the housing is just being driven up,
Yeah.
and it's wild. It's
Yeah.
wild.
It is so. I don't even know how to make sense of it. I assumed, and whenever I talk to people who've never been here before, they always ask me questions like, "You want to live there?" Like, yeah, I like living here, and I thought I was going to stay here, and I'm still trying to, but it's getting more and more bleak. I mean, when
Yeah.
I moved here in 2010, the average house price was under $200,000. And just like checking in again, if you would have fast forward to like 2016, it only had gone up to like 250. But since 2016 to now, it went from 250 to the average, the lowest you can get a house. The lowest you can get a house, if you go on Zillow right now in Missoula, Montana, is like 420,000. The
What?
lowest. The lowest. And there are no houses for under 400K in this town. None. And wages have not budged. They have not budged. But there are so many people moving here from California, and they bring their wages with them, where they were able to afford $1 million homes in Cali. So what's a 500 grand home in Missoula, Montana? It's nothing. It's nothing. And
Mm,
and they can keep their remote work jobs, so they're still being paid like they live in California, but now they don't live there anymore. So the rest of us are sitting here trying to like squeeze out these apartments, who the apartments are now getting more and more expensive because the town is corrupt. And so they're like, let's raise everyone's property taxes. And
yeah.
the landlords are like, we're not paying those property taxes. Tenants are going to pay it with higher rent. And so
Yeah.
now, like, you got people who like, I think they say you are, I forget the exact term, but you're not supposed to be paying more than 30% of your total income on your rent, for instance.
Mhm.
There are people who like more than half of their income just goes to their rent. And what are you supposed to survive on after that? When more
Right.
than half of the money you make every month just goes to rent. That's not including all the other bills we have to pay. And let's not even talk about how the fact that like food seems to be getting more and more expensive every single day. Like, Grubhub and DoorDash are cool and all that, but who wants to pay $25 for a meal?
Right.
It's just like where is the money supposed to be coming from? And yet, again, you have people who have the audacity to be like, oh, well, you need to make better life choices.
And it's like, and
Like,
those are,
I'm
and
sorry.
that's why I'm just like, those people are the same people who we shouldn't be listening to, because if their resolution or their solution to the stagnant wages and the increased living expenses is that you need to do better with your money, what do you want me to do? Go to a casino every 2 weeks? Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean I need to do better? If I'm making, and let's say I work at Amazon, and let's do the math real quick. Because I just did this math maybe like a month or so ago. Full time Amazon, 2,400 a month, right?
Yeah,
Let's say it's 2,400 a month, but my take home,
it's going to be
let's
around
say
like 2 grand.
let's say without taxes, was it 0.73 or 0.75?
I think I've done it
Okay.
before. I think it's roughly
Yeah.
like 1960 or like
Yeah.
2040, depends on like if you claim a dependent or not. But
Yeah. So
you're right around 2 grand.
let's say you don't claim independent. So you make 2,400, but you take home, let's say you make 1950 when you take home. If the apartments, unless the apartments are, let's see, times the apartment that you will be able to afford at 30% is $585. Now, don't know how many roommates you would have to have in order to make that work in your life. But there's I have not lived in any area that 585. I mean, unless you want to live in like North Dakota or like no, but even there, their prices are going up too.
They are, because the
But
oil boom.
yeah, there's there's absolutely nowhere. So even if the minimum wage was raised to $15 an hour, and that's just barely livable. That's just barely livable. So I don't understand why people in these people who get on and just say you need to do better. No, what are you talking about? Unless you have created an organization that's called Do Better, and I need to go there and you're going to give me money so I can live my life,
Yeah.
then you need to not talk to me.
No, you're speaking the truth here, and I feel like, you know, rightfully so, because it can be a lot. People don't pay attention to politics every day, and I
Right.
get that. I'm a person who has a political podcast. I don't pay attention to politics every day. You can't. Your brain will explode. My brain will explode. I swear to you that is actually the reason why I keep my show a weekly show, because I have to give myself days off, because
Yeah.
seeing because you can't make sense of what happens on a day-to-day basis in the political world, because it does not make sense. The
No.
decisions don't make sense. The laws don't make sense. Like, the discussions don't make sense. It only makes sense to the people who are profiting off of them. And the only reason that that's able to continue, unfortunately, is because there's so many people who essentially don't realize they're being taken advantage of. Because every time that people collectively get together and say this needs to change, things do change. Sometimes it's really small, but things do start to change. And I feel like the thing that really keeps us from being able to get these changes that we need is that enough people aren't, like, don't have the information that they need, which is where I feel like someone like kind of like me comes in, and there's other people, like, who are willing to stay engaged with politics and constantly put out more and more information, because these mainstream forms of media, they are very, very willing to not only lie to you personally, but they'll bring on other
Absolutely.
people to lie to you. They will
Absolutely.
show you reports that will lie to you. Like, they're not
Ah,
trying to change things. They are very comfortable with the way that things are. And
yes.
so they have no benefit to telling you the truth.
Yeah.
So it's really up to us individually to go out of our way to educate ourselves, because that is not the only step, but it's the first step to realizing what's happening, so that we can actually kind of get together and demand the change that we actually need. And that starts with education. So, I encourage anybody who's listening right now, just don't get super comfortable with this Biden administration, that you think that he's just going to ride in some like white knight and save the world, because he's not.
Right.
He's not going to. He's not
Right.
going. If we don't stay on top of him, he's going to chill. He's going to coast. And I don't want us to get so comfortable with him or with his presidency that we wake up in 2024 and we're like, wait a second, why aren't things better?
Listen, and that's why I talk to people all the time about, like, be a critical consumer of information, get involved, and I talk about getting involved in your local community, because I talk to more and more people now who have never really traveled anywhere else. So
Yeah.
like, I've lived in a lot of different places, and a lot of people who I talk to now are just like, well, I've lived in this area, born and raised, and I'm a part of this. And I'm like, okay, but how often do you vote in local elections? Well, it's every 4 years. No. No. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Local elections happen all the time. So if you vote for your sheriffs, you vote for, your attorney people, or your judges or whatever. You have to vote in your local elections, because those are the things that actually affect you as an individual in your life, in your city, in your area. And if you're able to vote in those and stay and be a critical consumer of information, which means that if somebody's feeding you a story about some political event or some vote or whatever bill it is, being a critical consumer of information means that you're actually going to find out what their motivation is. What story are they telling you? Why are they telling you this story? Why does your vote matter? And what it could sway in either direction, regardless of what it is. I feel like people I want you to try to be more engaged in it. And like you said, it doesn't have to be an everyday thing.
Nope.
But doing it on a regular basis, even if you like, okay, what happened this month in politics?
Yeah.
What is going to affect me? Like those who have, especially y'all who have kids. If you have kids, you should be especially involved because knowing what's going to happen at the schools that will affect your property taxes, that will affect how the schools will handle your kids, those who are getting public assistance, that like it's going to make a difference. It's going to make
Yeah.
a difference if you're involved.
And especially if you live in a red state right now, they are trying like hell to roll back voting rights. And I gotta
Oh
tell
my
you,
gosh, yes.
if you do not believe that your vote matters, I only will ask you one simple question. If your vote does not matter, then why are the Republicans always trying to make sure that less and less people can vote?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, like no one works that hard to do something unless it has a direct benefit for them. You know, we're
Yeah.
talking about politicians here. They're not out there. Like most of these people aren't actually good people. That's another problem that we have in the country is that we send a bunch of we find our best gargoyles in our communities and we send them over to Washington D.C. to represent us. You know, like it's just like we can do better. I'm glad, like whether or not you like someone like AOC, I like her. But even if you're someone who doesn't like her, like we need more people like her in Congress, like people who actually came from the community and
Yes.
actually see, like whether you agree with their politics or not, they are actually trying to help people of their community and
Yeah.
people like all over the place. She was a bartender, like
Yeah.
no one special. Like she wasn't like, someone working in some hedge fund or like some giant lawyer or some stuff like that. She was working in a bar. She got politically motivated. She ran for Congress. Now she's tearing it up. I'm just like, we just need more people who have that kind of energy going into Congress, not these people who get there and they're like, well, we could do something for the little people, but I think Exxon needs a raise.
Yes, exactly. I I really want more AOCs, and it doesn't, and more AOCs doesn't mean more replicas, but more people who actually come from the reality that we live in.
Yeah.
I think being a bartender is not by any means an easy job, but it's not like people are like, oh, it's low skill work. It is. What you have to be able to connect with people, you have to be able to connect with your community in order to be a successful bartender, at least. But her knowing what's happening, her knowing what it means to have to like figure out how bills are going to be paid, what tips she's going to make, and where people are coming from, that knowledge alone is going to make a huge difference, as opposed to the people who are so far removed from the reality of those who go to bars or those who work at bars, and not just bars, but in the community, your local grocer, your local, I don't know. Do they still have CD stores? I don't know if they still have CD stores.
I mean,
I know
there are.
Sam Goody is not a thing anymore,
I've
unfortunately.
seen a store here in my local town that's not a CD store, but they sell CDs in the store.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, those stores too. But
Yeah.
being able to say, well, I'm from this area where, people have to figure out if they're going to pay farmers more money as opposed to going to the grocers. Those
Yeah.
kinds of conversations need to be had on a grander stage, because that's a lot of the reality that we all live in. So if we can get more people who are on par with where she is and where she's come from, then we can kind of close that gap, because so many of the people in Congress were just like old white dudes who have been in there for like 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And if you are, I mean, the first year you're in, it's like, yeah, I remember like my parents had us upper middle class or upper class, whatever. And then as the years goes on, that gap widens with the reality of the country and where you are. And so I feel like having more people who come from, well, I'm not a career politician, I just did this, not a Donald Trump type. Not a Donald Trump type. For the love of God, not a Donald Trump type, but someone who has a more balanced view of, this is how essentially I would want to do better for my state. Like, that's what I would appreciate.
You know what? Honestly, talking about Donald Trump might be the great way to end this conversation, because, in all honesty, I really believe this. The scariest part about Donald Trump's presidency has literally nothing to do with him directly. The scariest part of Donald Trump's presidency is that he has normalized the rhetoric that he had, and it's not going to take that much time for someone who is infinitely smarter than Trump to just recreate that playbook, where basically he just takes the formula of Trump but applies it to an actually smart person, and then something truly like scary. And so it's a shame that we're now recording this episode on a day where Trump got acquitted in the Senate. Um, so it basically just tells me that we are, it was inevitable that was going to happen, in my opinion. You were never going to get fined 17 senators 17 Republican senators to join the Democrats. That was never going to happen. But we are essentially telling people that what Trump says is not a big deal. And when you say that speech is not a big deal, it just gives the license for other people to use that speech. And not everyone's as dumb as Trump. They will find a smart way to use that manipulation into something that we can't predict, because let's just be fair, we didn't know what Trump's effect would be on the country until we saw it. I couldn't imagine what a Trump type rhetoric would be with a more calculated approach.
So that's going to be in my nightmares. Thank you for that. Appreciate you. I don't know why I never really considered that before, but I appreciate you for giving me those kind of nightmares. Thank you for that. I'm glad that we had this conversation. But tell people where they can find you.
Yeah, so my name is Desmond Price. The podcast is called Independent Thought. You can find me on all major platforms. To keep up with the show directly, follow me on Instagram at Independent Thought. I post my story daily. It is the best place to keep up with me and the podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm just stuck because I literally did not think about replicating his just maniacal plan. Like, that is okay. All right. I'm going to be okay. I promise you. I'm going to be okay. That is a scary thought. But thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of Take a Space Podcast. I am your host, Leah, and I just want to thank Desmond for giving us those nightmares to have to sit with for the next couple years, and hope that nobody else does that. Make sure to follow us at Take a Space Pod. That's Take a Space POD on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hopefully on Thursday, when the Thursday after this airs on Tuesday, we can have Desmond back for the live show. It's at 8 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll keep you posted. Thank you so much. You all have a great one.